EBE-019, the seed of silence, when silence becomes alive. Part 1. The silence beneath the earth. The tremor hit northern Alaska at 2:14 a.m. local time. A shallow 5.7 magnitude quake shook the old mining town of Dredge Hill, a ghost settlement long abandoned since the 1970s. Beneath the frost-bitten soil, deep in the crumbling shafts of Mine 12C, something that had slept for untold centuries was disturbed. 3 days later, a surveying team sent by the Department of Geological Anomalies reported strange findings in the collapsed tunnel. A smooth, spherical object embedded in the rock, roughly the size of a basketball, but unnaturally cold to the touch. The object emitted no heat, no radiation, and no sound. Yet anyone who stood near it for more than a few minutes experienced nausea, disorientation, and ringing in the ears that quickly gave way to total silence. Not the absence of sound, but a forced muting of all ambient noise, even internal. The object, which was immediately coded as EBE-019, was extracted under Level 5 containment protocols and flown to Black Ridge Facility, a subterranean research compound known only to a handful of high-clearance officials. The lead researcher, Dr. Evelyn Sharp, was among the first to examine it. In her initial log, she described it as a seed made of absence, something that doesn't just sit in space, but seems to delete it. Over the next 48 hours, all acoustic recording devices in the lab began to fail. Audio logs turned up blank. Researchers found they could no longer hear their own voices on playback. Live communications across the intercom became distorted, warped, then completely unintelligible. And then, on the third night, the sphere cracked. The sound, or lack thereof, was not captured, but a soft, flickering glow pulsed from within the fractured shell. Security footage showed the object opening like a blooming flower, revealing a pale, fleshy mass inside. It pulsed rhythmically, as if breathing, as it rose 2 inches off the table, levitating gently. Every single monitor in the lab simultaneously shorted out. From that moment on, no one spoke. Not because they couldn't, but because something in the room no longer allowed it. Part 2. The blooming horror. For the first 12 hours after its emergence, EBE-019 remained suspended in midair, hovering silently above the fractured remains of its outer shell. No longer a sphere, the entity now resembled a malformed infant, its skin a waxy, semi-translucent membrane stretched over fragile, root-like bones. Where a mouth should have been, there was nothing but smooth, undisturbed flesh. Its eyes were empty sockets, sealed shut with a clear, gel-like film. But somehow, it watched them. Dr. Sharp's handwritten notes, recovered later from her office wall, scratched in pen and fingernail, described the creature's presence as palpable thought pressure. She and her team could no longer communicate with one another by voice. Attempting to speak caused an immediate migraine, a crushing distortion of inner equilibrium. Even thoughts, as some began to report, were no longer private. I heard his question before he asked it. It's in my head, tasting the words I haven't spoken yet. Most disturbing was the physical decay, not of the creature, but of the staff. Within 2 days, researchers began showing signs of sensory degradation. Several lost their sense of taste and smell. One lab tech went completely blind overnight, while another carved deep into her own throat, severing her vocal cords with surgical precision. Surveillance showed her calm, almost robotic, as she did it, smiling faintly the entire time. When a containment officer attempted to reset the system failsafe to isolate the lab, his body went into cardiac arrest. The internal defibrillator found no electrical signal to engage, as if the heart had been told to stop and simply obeyed. The being had yet to move. It hovered in stillness, but around it, language was dying. Not just speech, but meaning. A shared sense of understanding began to erode. Researchers failed to read instruments correctly. Symbols lost clarity. Digital interfaces displayed characters from unknown alphabets, and some staff described dreaming in languages they'd never learned. We are being unmade through our own minds. Dr. Evelyn Sharp, final entry, never spoken aloud, only scrawled on glass. Despite all of this, one protocol remained untouched. No termination attempt was authorized, because in the face of such complete mental collapse, the team had forgotten how to write the order. Part 3. The 9-minute silence. The breach occurred at 3:41 a.m. There were no alarms, no flashing lights, no screaming, just silence, complete and undisturbed. Security logs show that all biometric systems in Lab Sector 4A simultaneously failed, registering null readings for heart rate, brain activity, and respiration for all personnel inside. Not death, just absence, like someone had pressed mute on existence itself. At 3:42, EBE-019 drifted through the reinforced observation glass, not shattering it, not bending it, phasing through it like a thought leaving the mind. It left behind a trail of translucent residue that evaporated on contact with light. The facility's AI monitoring system, Halo 7, documented exactly 9 minutes of complete data silence from every sensor within the lower complex. Video feeds went dark, audio streams flatlined, heat signatures vanished. Even backup power sources failed. When signal resumed at 3:50, only one man remained alive. Technician Thomas Vale, 26 years old, was found kneeling in the middle of the corridor, stripped to his undershirt, his hands soaked in blood. Around him, drawn in sweeping circles on the sterile floor, were symbols no one recognized, geometric patterns that pulsed faintly under UV light, like some language waiting to be read. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. He simply kept drawing. His fingernails had been worn down to the bone. Emergency response was immediate. A full containment unit was deployed. They found the lab in a state of impossible entropy. Walls had melted into strange fibrous textures. Equipment was twisted like vines around steel beams. The air itself shimmered, and inside the epicenter, the space seemed larger than the room it occupied. Thomas Vale was airlifted under maximum quarantine for 72 hours He did not respond to stimuli. But on the fourth day, he began tapping his finger in rhythmic patterns, consistent, repeated intervals, impossible to decipher. Some believe he was trying to communicate. Others believe he was listening. Part 4. The Whispering Pattern. Excerpt. Classified Debriefing Log. Task Force Ion 6. Interviewer, Lieutenant Colonel Reeve. Subject, Technician Thomas Vale. Begin audio log. Transcription only. Audio not recoverable. Reeve. Thomas, can you hear me? No response. Reeve, you've been drawing the same pattern for hours. What does it mean? Subject taps 4 times. Pauses. Then taps 3. Repeats. We've run it through every linguistic database we have. We need you to help us understand. Subject turns his head slowly, begins mouthing words silently. Lip-reading analysts suggest the phrase, "It's growing inside." Reeve, what is? Subject points to his temple, then to the ceiling, then to the interviewer. Sudden, static interference. Log ends. Following the incident, the Black Ridge facility was permanently sealed. Satellite scans of the region revealed an expanding zone of acoustic nullification, a 4-kilometer radius where no sound could be recorded, generated, or perceived. Animals avoided the perimeter. Birds flying over the site were found dead mid-flight, internal organs liquefied, with no signs of trauma. Independent agents who attempted unauthorized entry reported hallucinations, nosebleeds, and the overwhelming urge to remove their tongues. One survivor, ex-CIA asset Amelia Knox, fled the site with both ears sealed shut using molten wax. Her final message, handwritten and delivered to a trusted contact, simply read, "The silence isn't empty. It's a message." Meanwhile, at a black site in Nevada, Thomas Vale continued to draw hundreds of pages of geometric symbols, spirals, fractals, glyphs that seemed to change shape when not observed directly. Analysts began to report shared dreams. 2 translators from separate departments committed suicide within hours of reviewing the same pattern. Dr. Anthony Rashid, an expert in xenolinguistics brought in from Geneva, proposed a theory. It's not a language in the human sense. It's a recursive virus of meaning, a thought form that consumes other thoughts. Once it enters your cognition, it rewrites how you process symbols, memory, even identity. He was later found comatose, his skull filled with an Part 5, The Living Absence. It's been 6 months since the Black Ridge incident. Officially, the site is marked as a geological hazard zone, off limits due to unstable seismic activity. Unofficially, no one who steps into that 4-kilometer radius returns whole. Drones malfunction. Recordings go blank. People disappear. Even satellites now refuse to map it. Pixels glitch. Coordinates shift. As if the land itself is uncooperative. EBE-019 was never found. And maybe it never needed to be. The theory now, whispered only in back rooms and behind encrypted firewalls, is that EBE-019 was never a single being, but a trigger, a catalyst, a seed planted millennia ago beneath the earth, waiting for sentient thought to brush against it, to awaken it. It's no longer contained, because it's no longer a thing. It's an idea, a pattern that breeds silence. Somewhere in a military hospital, Thomas Vale lies unresponsive, hooked to machines that don't beep, don't pulse, don't sound. But every day, nurses report finding more of those glyphs etched into the walls, drawn with fingertips, with blood, with breath condensed on glass. One nurse had to be restrained after trying to cut her own ears off, screaming that she could hear the quiet talking. And then there are the dreams. Random civilians across the globe have begun reporting eerily similar night terrors, hovering pale infants with no mouths, symbols pulsing beneath their skin, a pressure that builds in the brain until thoughts fall silent. A whisper, not heard, but understood. We do not invade, you invite us. Final note from the case file, redacted. Silence is no longer the absence of sound. It is a presence, and it is listening. If this story chilled you to the bone, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new horror drop from Rule Horror Series. And remember, not everything that's silent is gone. Sometimes it's just waiting to be heard.